there's a house at the moment across the street which is being destroyed. There's been like a massive dump truck and everything that's been dragging out sections of... I mean, the house is pretty old. So if there's any like construction noises or anything that you can hear in the background, it's going to be because of that. Hopefully the microphone's not going to pick it up too much, but we'll see. Welcome back to Sebastian's Cauldron. I am Sebastian. Today we are going to be talking a little bit about using pre-written adventures or modules, however you want to call them, sort of some tips on how to use them and if you should use them at all. My very first thing that I will say just on that is that there are going to be people who will say it is virtuous to run the pre-written modules that Wizards of the Coast and many other people have been putting out, and that's fair enough. They are paid writers for a reason. There is some really great stuff out there. On the other sort of side of the spectrum, there are people who will say that you can only really be a dungeon master if you are homebrewing everything, if you are creating your own world, your own setting, your own adventures, even so far as to doing the whole J.R.R. Tolkien thing and coming up with languages and everything. And those people can think that, sure. It is not, you are not going to be a better or worse dungeon master either way if you use some pre-written, some homebrew. I have done both. As I have mentioned, I used the starter set to get started, so I used Lost Mines of Phandelver, and from there I sort of moved to more homebrew stuff, and I would take encounters and everything from modules as I see fit. So you should not feel bad, you should not think you're a fake DM or anything if you're using homebrew or if you're using a pre-written adventure. As long as you are creating a story and making sure your players are having fun, that's the number one thing. So what are modules? People will think that they are these long, lengthy source books that you have to read every page of, take very, very diligent notes in order to run this scripted, linear A to B to C to D adventure. And that's not true. And I think that is a pitfall that a lot of newer DMs will sort of find themselves in, and it's something that's really going to harm your experience. You should think of modules not as this linear story like an actual fiction book or a TV show episode, but you should think of it as an overall framework. The module itself is not a story, but instead a sort of story pitch. When you're looking at the different modules that are out there for 5th edition or even for the other editions of D&D, or even looking at other games like Pathfinder, they have some really fantastic modules which I've been pinching things from, but you will see that they are going to have their very own unique sort of story and flavor and sort of general sort of genre. One of the most famous ones is of course Curse of Strahd, which is basically Dracula. It's like a gothic horror survival, sort of very grim, dark and sort of evil setting that can be kind of depressing to play, but also a lot of fun. It's something I want to run eventually. There are of course other modules. Waterdeep Dragon Heist is basically a city urban adventure with lots of moving factions and political sort of aspects to it, and its sequel, Waterdeep Dungeon of the Mad Mage, is a mega dungeon that is really cool to explore. It's got a lot of crazy stuff in it. Out of the Abyss is a fantastic Underdark adventure, and sort of, again, going back to those survival horror, fish out of water, out of the frying pan, into the fire, sort of pulp storytelling. And of course Lost Mines of Phandelver, which basically sets it up as a Western. I mean, really, actually, when you think about it, D&D sort of presumes a Western setting. A group of strangers rolling into a town, usually detached from civilization, and they're the only ones who can solve X problem. A group of outlaws have threatened to destroy the very small farmer's village unless they manage to come up with a 20,000 gold bounty, which of course they're not going to do. Or perhaps a dragon has been attacking the farms and the livestock, and now they are unable to make any money and unable to feed themselves or their families. Or even the classic, there are two sides fighting over control of a town, and the group of adventurers have just arrived, finding themselves in the middle of a brutal battle. I've mentioned before, you can go and watch a bunch of movies, get lots of inspiration. Those last few come from the Dollars trilogy, A Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Fantastic spaghetti western movies. I've gone on a tangent. Let's go back to talking about modules. As I said, these modules are going to be story pitches, so get together with your players and talk about what the module is. You don't have to go too in depth, you don't have to give them all of the secrets and the details, but you should give them a vague idea. You don't want your players coming in thinking that they're going to be doing a heroic fantasy game where they can go and save the world and then throw them into Barovia, where they are being hunted by the merciless Count Strahd. It's going to be a misalignment of player expectations and DM expectations, and that's going to be really bad. That's what we will often call a session zero, when you get together with your players and talk about what the game's going to be like. That's another video that we'll do sometime in the future. If your players like the sound of the story pitch you've presented, then fantastic, you can start using that module. You may feel that you need to read the entire thing and, as I said, take all these notes and be prepared to run Encounter 1A followed by Encounter 1B, but that is absolutely not how you should use modules. It is a terrible way of doing it. It's really the only good way to set out the modules and sort of lay out the content is to present them like that, but you should not be running them like that. The adventures themselves are acting as a framework for you to sort of present and then mess around and play with. Think of it less as a story and more so as a story system, something that you can build off of to create things. In that sense, you shouldn't feel obligated or feel sort of constrained by what's written in the text. If the text says that there are supposed to be 5 goblins in the street, but you don't think that's enough, you can make it 6, you can make it 7. Maybe they're not goblins, maybe they're hobgoblins, orcs. Maybe that your party's pissed you off and so you present 6 dragons. Why not? A TPK is a fun way to start a campaign, I suppose. Furthermore, you should not feel like every single encounter that is written in the module needs to be completed. This is not a video game. You don't need to get 100% in order to unlock the secret ending where you find out that big story. Like, it's not a video game. It is absolutely in your control. You can strip down a module to its bare components and finish it in a couple of sessions. You can really flesh out things and let it drag on for years. I don't know how great that would be, but I suppose there are some expansive modules that go that length of time. Curse of Strahd, for instance, is meant to go for a while. So what would I do if I was going to run a module now, in the next couple of days? I would grab the module, I would read the first section, and then I would probably just skim over the next few things. I'd probably flip to the very back, just because I find that the module doesn't exactly present who the BBEG, Big Bad Evil Guy, is at the very front. You sort of have to go all the way to the back. So I'm gonna grab one of the modules. Here we go. So we've got Lost Minds of Flapdong Flapdoof Fandelver. Lost Minds of Fandelver, which is the starter set module, and we're going to talk about this a little more in depth in the next video. But if we quickly open it up, we'll see that it has a very handy table of contents, which all of the modules do. We can see the first couple of things are going to talk about the background, overview, and adventure hook. They're usually going to present at least the background and the overview. Adventure hook, sometimes they will do, sometimes not always. It depends on which one you're looking at. The background and overview are important if you are going to be running in, say, the Forgotten Realms, which is the presumed setting for D&D 5th edition. The overview is going to give you, obviously, an overview of the entire adventure. Usually it's going to get split into chapters or parts, and then the adventure hook is just going to give you a reason for why your players are going to be doing this thing. We have to go and find the princess and stop the Death Star. We have to go and whatever your reason is. The reason why I say you should read the first part is because generally the beginning of the module is the thing that is going to be run closest to what is written. From there, your players are going to probably go and do something completely different. And that is totally cool. If they're going off to do something completely different, it is hopefully because they have found something in your setting or something you've presented that seems really cool. Maybe you made up a thieves guild on the spot and they decided they want to go and look at the thieves guild. Don't look at that as, I have failed at running the module and now I have to try and, get these guys back onto the rails, back onto where the module's supposed to take them. Start doing the Thieves Guild adventure. There's plenty of stuff out there on running Thieves Guilds, and maybe they want to do the whole, mercenaries for hire, go in and do some heist Mission Impossible style. That is totally cool. You should not feel like you need to drag them back over to where the module is. That's generally, I think, one of the things that people say is bad about using modules is that it is very easy to get off of the beaten path and start doing something that is not covered by the module. And I would say that's completely fine. If your players only got through the first 5 pages of the module and then they started doing something else, if they're having fun, if you're having fun, does it really matter that you stop using the module? I don't think it does. And the module is going to have so many additional things that you can come back to. You can drag and drop things into there. Maybe not completely drag and drop, but the general ideas are always going to be transferable. This comes to another point, which is any preparation that you do, any encounters or story beats that you prepare that your players don't end up using, that is not wasted. You can keep those, you can reuse them, recontextualize them in pretty much any situation. Never get rid of any prep that you've done. Never think that anything is a waste, because you can almost always find a way to reuse it. I think I've mentioned this before, but there is a certain fortress that I prepared for one campaign about a year or so ago, which ended up not getting used, and it is now something that is going to hopefully make an appearance in the next couple of months for Ascension. It will be reusable almost always. Different modules, different adventures are going to have slightly different ways of laying out and ways that you would want to prepare them. Something like Lost Mines of Phandelver, you can read the overview, read the first part, and then sort of just see where things go from there. Something like Curse of Strahd, as I mentioned, that's going to require a lot of work on your end, which isn't a bad thing, I would say. Curse of Strahd seems really cool. There's lots of also great resources online. I'll put a couple of links down below because why not, but especially on Reddit. Places like r/Curse of Strahd is a fantastic resource for people who have compiled a whole bunch of guides, tips, and everything to flesh out the world. Generally, Reddit is a fantastic place to find resources, tips, and tricks on how to run pretty much all of the modules. There are great resources everywhere online for running these kinds of things. You are not the first person to be looking at running whatever module it is. There is always going to have been at least one person online who can give you some advice. So that is the module video. The next couple of videos we are going to talk a little more specifically about Lost Mines of Phandelver. There are 4 parts in that adventure, which I think the first 2 parts I could probably cover in one video, and then the next 2 maybe in one more video, or perhaps 2. I'm not 100% decided on if I want to make it one long video or several shorter videos, so if you guys have a preference, please let me know. You can leave a comment down there. You can click other things down there while you're at it too, the usual YouTube stuff. I'm going to keep making videos as long as I can because this is a lot of fun for me to do, and I hope that you guys have been enjoying them, and I will see you guys some other time.